Welcome to our deep dive, into the world of power
Oh,
dynamics.
yeah.
Through history, as seen through the lens of Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power,
Hmm.
we're going to be dissecting strategies for gaining and maintaining power
Right.
from historical figures like Machiavelli, Sun Tzu,
Yeah.
and even taking a peek into the playbook of a few con artists.
Yeah.
So consider this your crash course in recognizing and navigating those subtle, often unspoken forces that
Yeah.
shape our interactions every day. Get ready for some surprising stories and insights that might just change how you view the world around you.
The 48 Laws of Power is a fascinating lens to examine history through.
Yeah.
You see these patterns emerge again and again from ancient empires
Right?
to the modern workplace.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with Law 1, Never Outshine the Master.
Okay.
Green tells the cautionary tale of Nicolas Fouquet, finance minister under King Louis XIV.
Right?
Imagine having the audacity to build a palace so magnificent and throw a party so lavish that you outshine the Sun King himself.
Well, that's exactly what Fouquet did. And let's just say Louis XIV was not amused.
Yeah.
Fouquet ended up imprisoned,
Oh.
accused of embezzlement. His mistake, making his superior feel insecure.
Wow, knowing your boss's insecurities and avoiding actions that trigger them.
Right.
Now that's a takeaway for the ages, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
It's applicable whether you're navigating the court of a king or the corporate ladder.
Absolutely. And Green's contrasts Fouquet with his successor, Jean-Baptiste Colbert,
Okay.
a man known for his dull personality
Hmm.
and even duller parties.
Right.
Colbert kept his head firmly attached to his shoulders
Yeah.
by making sure the money and the spotlight went straight to the king.
Have you ever had a colleague who, despite good intentions, always seemed to rub the boss the wrong way?
Oh, yeah.
This law explains why that happens sometimes. Flying under the radar is the smartest move.
Yeah, definitely.
Now let's move on to Law 2. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. This one might seem counterintuitive, but Green backs it up with some compelling historical examples.
Yeah.
Take the story of Emperor Michael III of the Byzantine Empire, who placed unwavering trust in his friend Basilius, and that turned out well for him, right?
Not exactly Basilius, despite having zero political experience.
Wow.
Was appointed as Michael's advisor. He repaid this trust by seizing the throne and having Michael executed.
Talk about a friend with benefits and not the good kind.
No.
It makes you think about a time when a friend's request put you in a difficult position. Did he helping them make you feel resentful? This law sheds light on why those closest to us can sometimes pose the biggest threats.
Precisely. Green highlights how favors and closeness can create an imbalance of power-breeding resentment and envy.
Right.
He contrasts Michael III's naive trust with the savvy strategy of Emperor Sung of China.
Okay.
Sung, instead of fearing his powerful generals, offered them a comfortable retirement, effectively neutralizing any potential threat.
Because sometimes a golden handshake is better than a backstab, right?
Indeed, it's a reminder that maintaining a healthy distance, even in friendships, can be crucial for self-preservation.
Now let's shift gears and dive into the realm of deception, specifically the importance of appearances and smokescreens.
Okay.
One of the most entertaining examples Green uses is the story of Yellow Kid. While a notorious con artist who managed to sell a worthless lodge
Yeah, wow.
to a businessman named Sam Giesel,
Wow.
Weil created an elaborate illusion by hiring a fake boxer, terrible Eddie Gross,
Okay.
to put on a show of shadowboxing while he pretended to meet with financiers. The familiar and seemingly harmless aspects of a business deal served as a perfect distraction,
Yeah.
allowing Weil to pocket Giesel's money.
Tiki.
So using the familiar to hide the unusual, that's a tactic to watch out for.
Right.
But this isn't just a con artist trick, is it?
Not at all. Think about how companies use carefully crafted PR campaigns to control their image,
Uh-huh.
even if their actions behind the scenes tell a different story. It's a modern-day smokescreen using positive press and branding to distract from potentially questionable practices.
It's a reminder that we should always look beyond the surface, especially when something seems too good to be true. Speaking of smokescreens, Green also tells the fascinating story of Haile Selassie, the Ethiopian emperor, who used deception to outmaneuver his rival Ras Bolcha. Selassie invited Bolcha to a lavish banquet, creating an atmosphere of peace and friendship.
Okay.
But while Bolcha was enjoying the festivities, Selassie was secretly disarming Bolcha's soldiers miles away.
Wow.
By the time Bolcha realized what was happening, it was too late.
Oh, no.
That's some next-level strategic thinking. It's like a scene out of a political thriller, concealing your intentions behind a facade of harmlessness.
Right.
That's a power move for the history books.
And it's a tactic that's still very much in play today.
Yeah.
Think about political campaigns,
Yeah.
corporate mergers,
Uh-huh.
even personal relationships. There's often a lot more going on beneath the surface than we realize.
So a healthy dose of skepticism and reading between the lines, those are valuable skills to cultivate, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about cultivating a reputation, a cornerstone of power. Green uses P.T. Barnum, the legendary showman, as a prime example.
Right.
Barnum, initially furious when his lack of reputation cost him a business deal,
Oh.
turned his perceived weakness into a strength.
Oh.
Barnum embraced his image as a showman, a master of humbuggeries, as he called it. He even revealed some of his tricks, which counterintuitively only enhanced his fame.
Wow.
It's like he was saying, you think I'm a trickster, well, watch this. And people loved it, turning a negative into a positive. That's a powerful branding lesson right there.
And it's incredibly relevant today, especially in our social media-driven world where personal branding has become so important.
Right.
Think about how influencers and even politicians carefully craft their online personas to project a certain image and influence perception.
It's a reminder that we're all constantly shaping our own narratives, whether we realize it or not. The question is, are we controlling the story, or is the story controlling us?
That's a question worth pondering.
Now let's move on to a law that feels especially relevant in today's world of constant distractions and information overload. Law 10.3, concentrate. Your Forces Green uses the example of the Rothschild banking dynasty, which rose from humble beginnings to dominate European finance for over a century.
Wow.
The Rothschilds understood the power of focus and strategic expansion. They sent 5 sons to different European capitals,
Okay.
creating a network that was both geographically dispersed and tightly knit. They controlled information flow, relied on a swift courier system,
Wow.
and even used a secret code to maintain their advantage.
That's smart.
It's like a 19th century version of a multinational corporation with a touch of espionage thrown in.
Right.
But Green also cautions against the dangers of overconcentration. He points out that monopolies can become inward-looking and ultimately self-destruct. They can also breed resentment, making them vulnerable to attack. So it's about finding that sweet spot between focus and flexibility, wouldn't you say?
Exactly.
Now contrast the Rothschilds' concentration with the approach employed by Mao Zedong and the communists in their fight for control of China.
Oh.
Instead of concentrating their forces, they used dispersal and guerrilla tactics to wear down their enemies.
Interesting.
It's a classic example of a weaker force using its agility and understanding of the terrain to outmaneuver a stronger opponent.
Yeah, like David and Goliath.
It's like the David and Goliath story, but played out on a massive scale. It makes you wonder if sometimes spreading your resources and efforts strategically can be more effective than putting all your eggs in one basket.
It's a thought-provoking concept, especially in today's world, where agility and adaptability are so crucial for success.
Now let's dive into a law that explores a darker side of power.
Okay.
Law 26. Keep your hands clean. This one is all about maintaining a spotless reputation, even if it means using others as scapegoats. Green tells the story of Cao Cao, a Chinese warlord facing a mutiny in his army due to delayed supplies. Instead of taking responsibility, Cao Cao chose a scapegoat.
Oh.
His chief supply officer effectively deflecting blame and preserving his authority.
Wow.
It's a brutal reminder that the urge to protect one's image and position can lead to sacrificing others. It's a story as old as time, wouldn't you say?
It is, and sadly, it's still very much relevant today. We see it in politics,
Yeah.
business, and even in our personal lives. It's a stark reminder that power can corrupt and that those who hold it aren't always accountable for their actions.
So a healthy dose of skepticism and a willingness to question authority, those are essential tools for navigating a world where not everyone plays by the rules.
I couldn't agree more.
Now let's shift gears and explore Law 37, create compelling spectacles. This law recognizes the power of grand gestures and attention-grabbing events to influence perception.
Right.
In a world saturated with information, creating spectacles seems more relevant than ever, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Green examines the career of Franz Mesmer, an 18th century showman who claimed to have discovered animal magnetism,
Okay.
a mysterious force he used to heal the sick.
Animal magnetism, that sounds like something straight out of a science fiction novel.
It does, and ultimately his methods were debunked.
Okay.
But Mesmer was a master of creating spectacles. He'd hold these elaborate sessions in darkened rooms filled with music and incense where he'd touch patients with iron rods,
Oh, wow.
inducing trances and convulsions.
It sounds almost like a precursor to hypnotism, doesn't it?
Very much so. While his methods were questionable, Mesmer understood the power of creating an immersive experience, playing on people's emotions and desire for the extraordinary found. He was a brilliant marketer before the term marketing even existed.
Think about the elaborate product launches, political rallies, and even social media stunts we see today.
Right.
They all tap into the same human desire for spectacle and emotional engagement.
It's a reminder that the way something is presented can be just as important as the content itself.
Now let's dive into a law that feels particularly relevant for anyone who has ever felt the pressure to conform. Law 38, think as you like, but behave like others. This law is all about the art of blending in, of appearing to conform, even if your inner thoughts and beliefs are completely different. Green illustrates this with the story of Tommaso Campanella,
Right.
a 17th century philosopher and friar imprisoned and tortured for his radical views.
Oh, wow.
It sounds like a dangerous time to be an independent thinker.
It was to survive.
Yeah.
Campanella had to be incredibly strategic. He feigned madness,
Uh-huh.
wrote a book contradicting his own beliefs,
Oh, wow.
and even disguised his ideas within critiques of the very authorities he disagreed with.
It's a remarkable example of using deception as a form of self-preservation. Have you ever felt pressure to conform to a certain way of thinking or behaving, even if it went against your own values? This law sheds light on the delicate balancing act of appearing to fit in while subtly pushing boundaries.
It's a reminder that even in situations where open dissent is dangerous, there are ways to subtly challenge the status quo.
Now, let's explore a law that goes beyond logic and argumentation. Law 43, work on the hearts and minds of others.
Okay.
This one is all about persuasion and influence, but it emphasizes the importance of understanding the psychology of your target audience. Their hopes and fears, their desires and insecurities appealing to emotions can be far more effective than relying solely on reason.
Right.
Think about the power of storytelling. A well-told story can stay with you long after you've forgotten the facts and figures. It can shape your beliefs and even motivate you to action.
Absolutely.
Green examines the career of Alcibiades, an Athenian general known for his charisma and ability to win over even his enemies.
Yeah.
He understood that to truly influence people, you had to adapt to their culture and values.
Right.
So it's like being a social chameleon, adapting your approach to resonate with different audiences.
Precisely when Alcibiades defected to Sparta, he shed his luxurious Athenian lifestyle and adopted the Spartans' austere ways.
Wow.
He did the same when he later sought refuge with the Persians.
It sounds like he was a master of playing the game, but did this constant shape-shifting ultimately work in his favor?
In the short term, yes, he gained power and influence in various settings, but this constant adaptation also made people suspicious, contributing to his eventual downfall.
Right.
It's a reminder that while adapting to your audience is crucial, there's a fine line between strategic flexibility and losing your core identity.
So authenticity still matters even in the game of power.
Yeah.
It's a delicate balance, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Now let's delve into one of the most counterintuitive laws in Green's arsenal.
Okay.
Law 44, disarm and infuriate with the mirror effect.
Interesting.
This law is all about psychological judo. By mirroring someone's behavior, their mannerisms, their values, you create a sense of rapport and even intimacy. They see a reflection of themselves in you, which can be incredibly disarming. But you said disarm and infuriate. How does mirroring lead to anger?
If done too obviously or insincerely, mirroring can backfire.
Okay.
It can feel like manipulation or mocking.
Right.
And when someone realizes they've been mirrored, it can trigger feelings of betrayal and anger.
So it's a tactic that requires finesse and a deep understanding of human psychology.
Yeah, definitely.
Green uses the example of Senno Rikyu, a 16th century Japanese tea master who was known for his ability to anticipate and harmonize with his guests' every need.
Oh, wow.
Rikyu would subtly mirror his guests' tastes and preferences, creating a sense of ease and connection.
So thoughtful.
Like a sophisticated form of flattery, isn't it?
Exactly. It's about reflecting back to people what they want to see, making them feel understood and validated.
Now let's talk about a law that's particularly relevant for leaders and anyone seeking to create change.
Okay.
Law 45. Preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once. This one is all about managing people's resistance to change. While everyone may agree on the need for change in principle, Too much change too quickly can be disruptive and even traumatic.
Right.
Think about a time when you had to adapt to a major change in your life.
Yeah.
It can be unsettling, even if the change is ultimately positive. Green uses the example of King Henry VIII's break from the Catholic Church.
Right.
Henry, driven by his desire to divorce Catherine of Aragon and Mary Anne Boleyn, implemented radical changes that shook the foundations of English society. He underestimated the power of tradition and the psychological comfort it provides.
Wow.
So even the most well-intentioned reforms can backfire if they're not implemented strategically and with sensitivity to people's emotional needs.
Precisely. It's about making change feel like a gradual improvement on the past.
Yeah.
Not a radical break.
Now let's explore one of the most counterintuitive laws.
Okay.
Law 46, never appear too perfect. This goes against everything we're taught about striving for excellence. Have you ever noticed how people who seem to have it all together sometimes attract negativity?
Oh, yeah, totally. It's the classic tall poppy syndrome. Green's point is that appearing flawless can trigger envy, resentment, and even a desire to see you fall.
Yeah.
He uses the example of Cosimo de' Medici, a powerful Renaissance banker and politician who was incredibly skilled at concealing his true power and influence.
Right.
Cosimo cultivated a modest persona, dressed simply, and even deferred to others, making them feel more powerful than he was.
Interesting.
It sounds like he was playing a strategic game of humility.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that sometimes downplaying your strengths can be more effective than flaunting them.
It's about making others feel comfortable and in control, even while you're subtly orchestrating things behind the scenes.
Now let's move on to a law that many people, especially those driven by ambition, struggle to learn.
Okay.
Law 47. Do not go past the mark you aimed for in victory. Learn when to stop. Knowing when to quit while you're ahead. That's a key lesson in the game of power.
It is.
Green tells the story of Sir Walter Raleigh, an English explorer who achieved great fame and fortune,
but couldn't resist pushing his luck.
Oh.
Raleigh's life was a roller coaster of triumphs and setbacks. He angered King James I with his relentless ambition and was ultimately accused of treason and executed.
Wow.
It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of hubris and the importance of recognizing when you've achieved your goals, knowing when to step back and enjoy your success.
Right.
Sometimes the greatest victory is knowing when to walk away from the table.
Yeah.
Now let's dive into one of the final laws in Green's book, and perhaps the most abstract and philosophical of them all.
Okay.
Law 48, assume formlessness.
Interesting.
It sounds like we're about to enter a Zen garden of wisdom.
In a way, yes. Green argues that true power lies in being adaptable, fluid, and unpredictable, like water.
So it's about being able to flow with the current, adapt to changing circumstances, rather than being rigid and inflexible.
Precisely. Green uses the example of the ancient Spartans, known for their military prowess and strict social order.
Right.
They were like a fortress, seemingly impenetrable, but ultimately inflexible.
The Spartans were certainly a force to be reckoned with, what led to their downfall.
Their rigid adherence to tradition and their fear of change made them vulnerable, while their neighbors were adapting to new ways of warfare and trade. The Spartans remained stuck in their own system, eventually losing their dominance.
It's a reminder that even the most powerful empires can crumble if they fail to adapt to the ever-changing dynamics of power.
Yeah.
And Green contrasts the Spartans' rigidity with the fluidity of the ancient Chinese game of Go.
Right.
Go. Isn't that the game that defeated the world champion Go player a few years ago?
That's right. And Green highlights the game's emphasis on strategic flexibility, encirclement, and indirect attack.
It's a fascinating analogy for understanding the nonlinear and often unpredictable nature of power dynamics.
And he connects the principles of Go to the military strategies of Mao Zedong, who famously said, "The enemy advances, we retreat. The enemy camps, we harass. The enemy tires, we attack. The enemy retreats, we pursue."
It's a brilliant example of using fluidity and adaptability to outmaneuver a stronger opponent. And it highlights the power of strategic retreat and knowing when to strike, a key lesson in the game of power.
Absolutely.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
Yeah, we have.
From the dangers of outshining your boss to the importance of adapting to change and embracing formlessness. Green's The 48 Laws of Power offers a fascinating lens through which to view the world.
It's a reminder that power dynamics are constantly at play, whether we're aware of them or not, and understanding these dynamics can be incredibly valuable, not just for those seeking to gain power, but for anyone who wants to navigate the complexities of human relationships and achieve their goals.
Stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive, where we'll continue to explore the subtle, often unspoken rules of the game of power.
Sounds good. Welcome back to our deep dive into Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power.
Back for more.
We're about to explore some more fascinating and perhaps even controversial laws that shed light on the often hidden dynamics of power.
Okay. So we left off talking about the importance of strategic flexibility and adapting to change. Now let's dive into a law that touches on the power of seduction. And I'm not talking about romantic relationships.
Okay.
It's Law 28, Enter Action with Boldness.
Okay.
This law is all about making a strong first impression, projecting an aura of confidence and determination that draws people in.
Right.
Greene uses the example of Victor Lustig, a con man who managed to sell the Eiffel Tower not once, but twice.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, he sold the Eiffel Tower? That's incredible.
Yeah.
How did he pull that off?
Well, Lustig was a master of creating an illusion of authority and legitimacy.
Okay.
He forged official documents, organized meetings at prestigious hotels, and played on people's greed and desire for a quick profit.
So it's like that old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah, and his boldness disarmed his victims, making them more susceptible to his elaborate schemes.
So it's about projecting an image of power even if you don't actually possess it. Fake it till you make it, as they say.
In a sense, yes. But Greene also emphasizes the importance of backing up that boldness with action. It's not just about talking the talk. You have to walk the walk as well.
Right.
Think about a time when you had to present an idea or make a pitch. Did you approach it with confidence and a clear plan?
Right.
This law reminds us that sometimes taking a bold step can create its own momentum, making success more likely.
It's about creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, projecting an image of success that others then buy into.
Precisely.
Okay. Now let's talk about a law that's all about playing the long game. Law 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew. This one sounds a bit ominous, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
But it's essentially about understanding people's weaknesses and motivations.
Okay.
Everyone has their own thumbscrew, a pressure point that can be used to influence their behavior.
So it's about figuring out what makes people tick, what they truly desire or fear?
Yeah. Greene uses the example of Cardinal Richelieu, a powerful figure in 17th century France who was a master of manipulating people's weaknesses. He would carefully study his rivals, identifying their vulnerabilities and exploiting them to his advantage.
It sounds like a combination of psychology and strategic chess, wouldn't you say?
Exactly. It's about understanding human nature and using that knowledge to your advantage.
Right.
But this law isn't just about manipulation, it's also about empathy.
Okay.
When you understand someone's motivations, you can connect with them on a deeper level, build trust, and even help them achieve their goals.
Okay.
Think about a time when you were trying to persuade someone to see your point of view. Did you consider their perspective and tailor your approach accordingly?
Yeah. So it's about finding that common ground, that point of leverage that allows you to move forward together?
Precisely.
Okay. Now let's explore a law that's all about choosing your battles wisely.
Okay.
Law 36, disdain things you cannot have ignoring them, is the best revenge.
Interesting.
This law is about recognizing when to let go, when to walk away from a situation that's not serving you. Greene uses the example of King Louis XIV's response to a satirical play that mocked him.
Oh, wow.
So how did the Sun King react to being ridiculed?
Instead of lashing out or trying to censor the play, Louis XIV chose to ignore it completely.
Okay.
He understood that any reaction would only give the play more attention and legitimacy.
Right.
By appearing indifferent, he effectively neutralized the threat.
That's a pretty powerful move, especially for someone in a position of authority. It takes a lot of self-control to resist the urge to react to criticism or negativity.
It does. And this law isn't just about ignoring insults.
Okay.
It's also about recognizing when to walk away from goals or desires that are unattainable or no longer serve you.
Right.
Think about a time when you were pursuing something that wasn't working out no matter how hard you tried. Did you eventually let go and move on to something else?
Yeah. So it's about recognizing when to cut your losses, conserving your energy for more fruitful endeavors.
Exactly.
Okay. Now let's dive into a law that's all about building a loyal, following Law 39, stirrup waters to catch fish. This one sounds a bit cryptic, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
But it's essentially about creating a sense of urgency and excitement to get people on your side. Greene uses the example of Ivan the Terrible, the first Tsar of Russia.
Ivan the Terrible, he certainly had a reputation for being, well, terrible.
Right.
How does he fit into this law?
Ivan used a combination of fear and charisma to keep his subjects in line. He would alternate between periods of terror and generosity, creating a climate of uncertainty that made people more dependent on him.
Oh.
By stirring up the water, so to speak,
Right.
he was able to consolidate his power.
So it's about keeping people off balance, making them feel like they need you to navigate the chaos.
Exactly. But this law can be applied in more positive ways as well.
Okay.
Think about a time when you were part of a successful team or project.
Yeah.
Was there a sense of shared purpose, a feeling of excitement and momentum that drove everyone forward?
So it's about creating a shared vision that inspires and motivates people to action.
Precisely.
Now let's explore a law that's all about the importance of timing.
Okay.
Law 42, strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. This one sounds a bit ruthless, doesn't it?
It does. But it's essentially about recognizing the key players in any situation.
Right.
And focusing your efforts on neutralizing their influence.
Okay.
Green uses the example of Cesare Borgia, an Italian nobleman and military leader known for his ruthlessness and strategic brilliance.
So it's like taking out the head of the snake, disrupting the chain of command.
Exactly. Borgia understood that by targeting the leaders, he could effectively dismantle his enemies' armies and weaken their power base.
Right.
This law isn't just about military strategy, though it's applicable in any situation where there's a clear hierarchy or power structure.
So whether you're dealing with a rival company or a dysfunctional team, the key is to identify the key players and figure out how to either win them over or neutralize their influence.
Precisely.
Well, we've covered some pretty heavy stuff in this second part of our deep dive. From the power of boldness and understanding people's weaknesses to the importance of choosing your battles wisely and recognizing the key players. Green's The 48 Laws of Power offers a fascinating, if somewhat unsettling glimpse into the dynamics of human behavior.
It's a reminder that power is always present, whether we're aware of it or not, and understanding the rules of the game can be incredibly valuable, not just for those seeking to climb the ladder of success, but for anyone who wants to navigate the complexities of human relationships and achieve their goals.
Stay tuned for part 3 of our deep dive, where we'll wrap things up with some final insights and reflections on what we've learned.
Okay, sounds good.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the 48 Laws of Power. We've journeyed through history, from the courts of kings to the backrooms of con artists, uncovering the timeless strategies people have used to gain and maintain power.
We've seen how these laws play out in both subtle and dramatic ways, shaping the course of empires, businesses, and even personal relationships.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about a law that emphasizes the power of timing and restraint. Law 40, despise the free lunch. This law is all about recognizing the hidden costs of anything that appears free.
Right.
Green argues that nothing is truly free. There's always a price to be paid, whether it's a favor out a compromise of values or a loss of independence.
Yeah, like there's no such thing as a free lunch.
So it's like that old saying, there's no such thing as a free lunch. But what's the deeper meaning here?
Green uses the example of Louis XIV,
Okay.
who would shower his courtiers with gifts and favors, seemingly out of generosity.
Right.
But these gifts came with strings attached. They created a sense of obligation and dependence, making the courtiers more willing to do the king's bidding.
So it's about recognizing that generosity, especially from those in positions of power, can be a subtle form of control. It makes you think about the times you've accepted a free offer, only to realize later that there were hidden expectations or obligations.
Precisely. This law encourages us to be more discerning, to consider the motivations behind any offer that seems too good to be true.
Now let's talk about a law that seems particularly relevant in our image-obsessed culture law. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. This one feels counterintuitive. Shouldn't we strive to emulate those who have achieved greatness?
It's tempting to follow in the footsteps of those who have come before us.
Right.
But Green cautions against trying to directly replicate their success. He argues that each person must forge their own path, building upon rather than imitating the achievements of others.
So it's about recognizing that what worked for someone else might not work for you.
Exactly. Green uses the example of Louis XV, who succeeded his grandfather, the legendary Louis XIV. Louis XV tried to rule in the same grand style as his predecessor, but he lacked his grandfather's charisma and political skills. His attempts to fill those shoes ultimately led to discontent and weakened his authority.
So instead of trying to be a carbon copy, it's about finding your own unique strengths and leadership style.
Precisely, this law encourages us to learn from the past, but not be bound by it. It's about creating your own legacy rather than living in the shadow of someone else's.
And finally, let's revisit one of the most thought-provoking laws we discussed earlier, Law 48. Assume formlessness. You describe this as the most abstract and philosophical of all the laws. Can you remind us why this concept is so important?
This law is all about adaptability, fluidity, and the ability to navigate change. Green contrasts the rigidity of a fortress with the fluidity of water, arguing that true power lies in being able to adapt to any situation to flow around obstacles rather than confronting them head-on.
So it's like being a martial artist using your opponent's strength against them rather than meeting force with force.
Exactly. Think about the times in your life when you've had to adapt to unexpected challenges or changes. Did you find that being flexible and open to new possibilities was more effective than trying to force things to go your way?
This law reminds us that the world is constantly changing, and those who are able to adapt will ultimately thrive.
And it ties back to the very first law we discussed.
Yeah.
Never outshine the master. By assuming formlessness, you avoid drawing unnecessary attention to yourself, allowing you to move through the world with greater ease and influence.
So it's about being both strategic and adaptable, knowing when to assert yourself and when to blend in.
Precisely.
Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power. It's been a fascinating journey full of surprising insights and thought-provoking examples.
I hope you've gained a new perspective on the dynamics of power, not just as a tool for manipulation, but as a force that shapes all aspects of our lives.
Remember, knowledge is power, and by understanding the rules of the game, you're better equipped to navigate the complexities of the world around you and achieve your goals.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We hope you've enjoyed it. Until next time, stay curious and stay empowered.